So I wanted to go over some more elements in MASH. So I'm a little bit under the weather today, so hopefully just bear with me. So in this file, what I've done is I've loaded up this mesh that I had created and I just trimmed it down. It's a very dense mesh from some of the mesas that I created for my castle piece. And what I started to do was load in some proxies. So let us go here. So these two proxies I haven't loaded yet here right here. So I already have a grass one already set up. So just to remind you, actually, you know what? Let me just delete one. So what you want to do is load it in. You want to go to Redshift, proxy, and then create. Yeah, create. So here we go. There's another proxy. And basically right here, the proxy, since I just clicked it, there's no file attached to it, so we have to find the file that I want. So let me go into my files. And we've done the grass so far, so let me do a tree. And then, you know, you can't see it right now because let's find it. There we go. I just hit F. So you can see right here under the proxy, there's a display mode. It defaults to being a bounding box for a Redshift. So this is a Redshift proxy. So now previewing the mesh, you can see now it's a tree. Let's go a little bit larger and you can see, you know, it's fairly dense. So what we can do is in here, we can lower the percentage that the proxy is displaying to take a little bit of a load off of our graphics card once we start scattering it. So actually, let me go back to 3 because this is the tree. So that's the placeholder 3. So let me go back and just call it tree. Let's go here and call this one grass only. And then let's go to placeholder 2 and find the file. Again, go back to Maya and bush. And preview mesh. There's the bush. It's inside where the grass was. So let's go down to 10%. Grass itself. Let's go down to 10%. And you can see they're all kind of inside each other because they're all going to the origin point. Now what you can kind of see is the grass is that small. I didn't name this one. Let me call it bush. And then we've got the tree. So the tree is at a scale of 1. The bush is small. Let me just delete this. I don't know what is a keyframe. There we go. So with the bush, Control A. Let's increase the scale before we go any more. 10, that's not enough. So this is just to have all our objects be slightly larger to see what they'll look like when we go to place them on the topology of the mesa. So I think that looks good. So let me hit F. There's our mesa. Looks pretty good overall. So let me select all 3 of our objects. Let me start with the tree because it goes by what we select first. So bush, grass. And then let's create a mesh network. Hit the square. So we want it to be instanced. So apply and close. And here we have our mesh editor. There's our mesh network. It's already distributed that 20 by the basis. Now we know we want it to go to the actual mesh, so you can go in the drop down and go mesh and then hook it up. Let's go mesh. So there's our mesh tab. So now we want to middle mouse drag the mesh. So now everything is going to scatter. And there's a tree. I think we have a couple, 1, 2, on the object. So now let's just kind of up it. And this is something that we dealt with earlier, the trees. There we go. And then something that I want to do is if you uncheck calculate rotation and then close this. Yes. So, and then use up vector so everything will go towards the up. And since I do have a render node here, let's see. Okay, and just to show you, like I was talking about here with the use up vector and calculate rotation, you can see here, it's kind of tough to see with the wire mesh, but what I did is I rendered out. So right here, this render, if you look at this tree and this tree, calculate rotation is on and use up vector. So what happens is it defines the instance placement based upon the mesh, so how it's going to go out with the normals. Then when you click up vector, so here you see the difference between it. It's rotated it a little bit, but the trees are still at an angle. And the minute that you uncheck calculate rotation, this is what you get. And now it's actually deriving using the up vector, the y, to have the objects be going up. So like for trees, you want up growth, whereas for, depending on the object that you're using, you may not want that, but trees are going to be growing up towards the sky, towards the sun. So this is what we want. So what I did is I left use up vector and turned off calculate rotation. Okay, so that's still using the distribute. So I'm going to turn this distribute down to 0. Now we don't see anything. Go back to the mesh node. And now we can click add a placer node. So now we have a placer node. And what is nice with the placer node, basically you can draw and place your objects, based on where you place them. So here's the object. And it's going to align to the object, and now I have them painting. I'm just holding it down and I'm getting a ton of trees basically as I place more and more objects. So now if we render, here you can see I placed a ton of trees over this mesa. Now the other thing you can do is you click the delete brush and you'll start deleting all kinds of the different trees. Increase the radius. Okay, so my last file crashed and then I started having weird instances or problems with Maya. So I just wanted to create a simple file and go back over things. So I don't like the size of my torus, my cube, so let me just scale that up. There we go. Okay, so mesh network, same as before. I just have it applied to a plane. Here's my placer. My distribute has 7, so let me just get rid of those. And let's go back to the placer. So here we have the add. So if we click placer, add, there we go. So now, because I added a mesh ID node on the bottom, if I turn that off, you can see now it's just doing the pyramids. Because there is something I want to show over here that you can just do with the brush setting without a mesh ID node. So if we go back to the placer, so the plus obviously adds. You can draw across, you can do more spacing, right? And then the delete, you basically just cross back over, and then whatever you paint will delete, like so. Let's go back to add, and then you can see here fixed If I go up to 1, now it's only going to paint the torus. As you can see, they're placing right on the where my pivot point was. Now if I go to 2, if you see, now I've already painted once with the torus. Now if I paint with the 2, that is actually the cube. And then if I go back to 0, there we go. There's the pyramids. So, you know, you can do it fixed or you could do it random. Let me delete these first. Just clear it out. Now you can obviously increase your brush's size. You can do a much quicker delete. Go back down where these are small. And instead of fix, you can do random. And the random ID would be cycling between these two parameters. So we have 2, so it should be 0, 1, and 2. So now if I paint, there we go. So now you can see it's going to randomly generate amongst there. Kind of cool. Now you can see, like with the strokes, that they will collide. Now you can, let's go back and delete. Now something that's, you know, kind of not 100% noticeable, but brush radius. So I'm going to draw right here. Now if I keep moving, everything is moving where my cursor is. So I have a massive buildup because my spacing is really small, but my brush radius, you can see here, is quite large, right? So if you click the scatter element, now you can see everything is scattering right amongst my brush area. And all I'm doing is moving back and forth, and it's moving within that range. So it's a little bit of a different thing in terms of how you want to populate amongst everything. So another thing that you can do is in the place node, if you hold down shift and paint on top, you can grow the objects. So I'm just growing them by holding shift, just by moving my brush over them. And then if you hold control, you can shrink them down. So there's a little bit of a parameter of giving, you know, random scaling on one object if you want. If you hold the M key when you go to click, let's try it again. You can basically, so I'm holding M and then I'm just left mouse dragging up and down, left and right. And basically up, down is like your scale, and then moving left to right is a rotate. So that's kind of cool. So now the other thing you can see down here is you can actually have a random scale, so you could be smaller than what we thought, what we started with, and go as large as 4, and then you can give it a variation of random rotation as well. So now if we go to, there we go. So now you can see everything kind of has, you know, you're getting random rotations, random scales just with the placer node, which is great. You know, you really get a variety amongst this the placer node, and you're getting predominantly what you want to paint, so where you want to paint things out on. Now the one final thing on the placer node is if you select the move tool, if you just marquee select where you grab this one object, so now you can move that one individual object, same thing anywhere else, wherever you get it. So now you can move that. So there is an individual capability of moving things within the plane. Now you can rotate. So this one's been rotated, but you can rotate it whatever degree that you want. And what's nice is it's based on the point of where the object was drawn. So it's going to stay on the surface. The pivot point is there, and then even scale. You know, you can scale it up, scale it down. You can even break the scale transformation so it can be in whatever direction that you want it to be. So you really have full capability of what do you want to do with these objects, you know. Scale it way down. Move. So even if there is collisions, you can rectify that by hand. So, pretty cool. Sorry for the simple geometry right now. Whatever problems I had in my previous file, I just thought it was easier to do something very simple. What I did with the placer node a little bit more, fancy. So I originally had these trees as proxies in Mentoray, and what I did is I started to replace them using the placer node, and this is what I ended up with. So you can really get very good precision, if you can go back and forth to what I was trying to match to, and I was just eyeballing it. You know, the placer node is really got a lot of good parameters within it.